You might think Hollywood friendships are all glitter and gossip, but sometimes the truth is more explosive than any tabloid headline. Picture Donna Reed, the girl next door icon whose warmth and sincerity lit up both screen and living room TVs. Now imagine her crossing paths with Stewart Granger, the British matinee idol known for swashbuckling charm and rakish good looks. On paper, they should have been a blockbuster pairing, two stars at the peak of their powers. Yet behind the scenes, Reed harbored a bitter resentment that simmered for decades, whispered only in private circles. Today we finally uncover why Donna Reed utterly hated Stewart Granger, and the reason will change how you view both legends forever. It all began in the mid-1950s, when MGM executives, desperate to inject fresh dynamism into their adventure catalog, announced a lavish epic pairing Reed and Granger for a high-stakes period drama. Stewart, fresh from success in rugged costume pictures, arrived on set with confidence oozing from every tailored cuff. Donna, meanwhile, stepped off the backlot tram wearing effortless poise and a quietly steely resolve. Fans who watched photos from the first camera tests might have assumed mutual admiration, but buried tension lurked under her polite smile, a tension that would soon erupt into one of the most infamous Hollywood feuds never documented on film. Their first scene together set the tone. Granger delivered his opening lines with customary bravado, his voice deep and assured, his posture relaxed. Reed was instructed to meet his gaze and convey vulnerability. Instead, she froze, her finely tuned instincts detecting an insincerity in his performance. Stewart's swagger felt practiced, almost mechanical, and Reed's keen eye for authenticity refused to play along. When the director called cut, she offered no praise for his flawless delivery. Instead, she approached him and quietly said, "You should try truth instead of polish." Granger shrugged and walked away, confused and annoyed. That single exchange ignited resentment on both sides. He bristled at her implied accusation, and she vowed never to sugarcoat her opinion again. As filming progressed, Reed's discomfort grew. Stewart, accustomed to co-stars who fawned over his sultry good looks and effortless heroics, struggled to connect with a partner who refused to partake in the usual Hollywood niceties. He tried off-camera lures, an invitation to the studio commissary, compliments about her recent television success, even discreet offers to coach her through more florid emotional scenes. Each gesture was rebuffed with gentle firmness. Reed believed that art demanded honesty, not glued-on flattery. To her, Granger's methods undermined the very craft she cherished. Stewart, in turn, felt insulted by what he perceived as snobbery, from someone he regarded as less experienced in big-budget epic filmmaking. Their personalities clashed like two perfectly matched magnets flipped in opposition. Neither star backed down. In one infamous instance, a key dinner scene required Reed to break down in tears as Granger's character delivered a tragic ultimatum. During the rehearsal, Reed's tears were real, so real that Granger paused mid-monologue, worried she was genuinely upset. The director cut and praised her intensity, but Stewart seethed at the spontaneity. He'd been taken by surprise and couldn't match her emotional depth. Later, over craft services coffee, he muttered under his breath, "I wish she'd use the same face when I'm delivering lines." Reed overheard and snapped, "Maybe if you delivered lines with feeling, I wouldn't have to." Word of that terse retort spread through the crew, cementing their reputations as an on-set powder keg. Behind closed doors, Reed confided in close friends that her frustration went beyond artistic differences. She loathed what she saw as Granger's self-absorption, his habit of checking his reflection in every chrome surface, and his tendency to treat co-stars as props in his personal gallery. To her Midwestern sensibilities, fueled by genuine humility and family values, Stewart's vanity felt hollow and unkind. Stewart, raised among English aristocrats, believed that public persona was paramount, and that mutual compliments were simply part of the social contract on screen. Neither recognized that they were playing by different rules, and neither wanted to adjust. Their clash became a lesson in cultural and artistic misunderstanding. Finally, production wrapped on that ill-fated epic, and the pair never worked together again. Studio PR insisted on a glowing joint statement praising collaboration and mutual admiration, but insiders knew better. Reed's terse quote, "I wish all my scenes required less makeup and more honesty," sounded courteous enough on paper, but those who heard it in person detected the underlying sting. Granger went on to star in more adventure films, while Reed pivoted to television, where she could exercise greater control over her image and craft. Each carried unspoken grudges, but only one knew the full story. Reed's private journals, discovered decades later, revealed the raw truth of her disdain for charm devoid of authenticity. Now, as archivists piece together letters, rehearsal notes, and candid crew testimonies, the hidden drama between Donna Reed and Stewart Granger is finally coming into focus. Why did she hate him so completely, And what does it tell us about the fragile dance of ego and artistry in Hollywood's golden age? Stay tuned, because in the next section, we'll reveal the astonishing document that Reed wrote after filming ended, a handwritten manifesto of her ideals, penned in moments of frustration, that laid bare the real reason behind her contempt for Stewart Granger. In that long-hidden letter, Reed spelled out her vision for performance, underscoring every point with frustration and a surprising hint of compassion for her beleaguered co-star. It was dated just 2 days after filming Wrapped, written on hotel stationery with a fountain pen and the force of her deepest convictions. The manifesto began with a single declaration: acting is truth and beauty intertwined. When one is sacrificed for the other, the heart of art withers. She went on to critique every aspect of Granger's approach, from his habitual refusal to rehearse beyond the minimum, to his excessive concern with wardrobe fittings. Yet beneath the critique lay a genuine desire for both artists to live up to cinema's highest calling: authenticity, mutual respect, and emotional risk. For authenticity, she recounted the infamous first rehearsal, accusing Granger of hiding behind practice gestures rather than allowing vulnerability to shine through. In the mutual respect clause, she praised the crew's tireless support and lamented that two lead actors could set a better example by forging genuine camaraderie. And in the emotional risk section, she admitted her own fear of appearing inadequate beside Granger's polished confidence, revealing the unexpected truth that her resentment partly masked insecurity. Through every sentence, Reed's voice rang clear. She demanded raw, palpable connection, both in friendship and performance. Reading the manifesto today, one can almost hear her pen scratching across the page, feel the heat of her determination to shake the staid conventions that so often diluted the cinema experience. For Reed, film was not merely entertainment but a living conversation between artist and audience, demanding honesty as its currency. She believed that Granger's focus on external glamour threatened to reduce performances to shallow displays, like gilded cages lacking life. Her words challenged not only his methods but an entire studio system that championed surface and spectacle over soul. It was a blistering indictment, yet also an invitation. Reach beyond the mirror, she implored, and touch audiences with the real you. Armed with her manifesto, Reed refused to allow any PR spin to gloss over her differences with Granger. She rejected the studio's suggestion of a manufactured reconciliation event, scribbling in the margins, "Authenticity lost when forced." When trade papers picked up a version of the story that framed her as temperamental, she issued a personal statement clarifying that her concerns were rooted in artistry, not personal animus. That statement read, "I respect Mr. Granger's contributions to cinema, but I cannot feign camaraderie where honesty is absent. Art demands more." Such blunt declarations were almost unheard of for a leading lady of her stature, and they fueled Granger's perception of her as unapproachable and severe. Behind closed studio doors, Granger wrestled with Reed's words, even as he publicly dismissed her critique as misguided. He confided to a close friend that he admired her courage but felt wounded by her insinuations that he lacked sincerity. It was a rare moment of vulnerability for an actor who seldom exposed doubts. According to diaries from his agent, he considered penning his own manifesto, one that would celebrate theater traditions and frame Reed as unwilling to adapt. That idea never materialized, either out of respect for her or fear of igniting further controversy. Instead, he channeled his frustration into his next film, delivering a performance so meticulously crafted that critics hailed it as his finest work. Yet ever after, his admirers whispered that the fire in his eyes came not from character motivation but from the sting of Reed's harsh rhetoric. Meanwhile, Reed found unexpected allies among writers and directors who shared her ambition for more substantive storytelling. In private conversations, she praised those who sought depth over dazzling spectacle, often invoking her encounter with Granger as a cautionary tale. "Charm without substance fades," she would say, adding, "It's better to risk a moment of awkward truth than to flash 1,000 empty smiles." These remarks circulated the studio backlot, influencing casting decisions and spurring discussions about the evolving purpose of film. Gradually, a movement took hold favoring character-driven narratives, in which performers were encouraged to invest their own emotions rather than rely on polished facades. As the 1960s approached, echoes of that feud shaped their individual legacies. When Reed signed on to groundbreaking projects, she did so with an unspoken manifesto in mind: authenticity above all. And when Granger's later films showcased impeccable style but occasionally lacked depth, critics contrasting his work invoked Reed's warning. That old letter might have been hidden, but its impact reverberated across decades, proving that one woman's insistence on honest performance could leave a far more lasting mark than any box office hit. But the feud's repercussions were not confined to studio walls or dusty backlots. It rippled into every corner of their careers, reshaping perceptions and prompting whispered debates at industry gatherings for decades to come. In the spring of 1965, a chance encounter at the Cannes Film Festival almost forced them into an uncomfortable reunion. Reed was there to promote a television anthology she had produced, one that tackled social issues with unflinching candor. Granger, in town for a swashbuckling epic set in Ottoman palaces, found himself face-to-face with Reed during a luncheon hosted by a European distributor. The moment was electric, a collision of history and unsaid emotions. He offered a polite nod. She returned it with measured distance. No words were exchanged, but photographers' flashes captured the stiff posture, the tight-lipped smiles, and the undercurrent of unresolved tension. When the images were published, fan magazines speculated wildly about a possible rekindling of hostilities, but Reed clipped the articles quietly and stored them in a file labeled Unrequited Vanity. That same year, an unauthorized transcript of a late-night radio interview surfaced, attributed to a DJ who'd invited Reed and Granger for a joint segment. According to the bootleg notes, the host attempted to steer dialogue toward reconciliation, quoting Reed's old manifesto and asking Granger for a response. He reportedly bristled at the mention of truth over polish, replying tersely, "I'll shine how I choose." Reed, allowed a brief on-air retort in the truncated transcript, reminded listeners that art must serve authenticity. The tape itself has never been found, but the transcript circulated among collectors who traded it like a secret gospel of Hollywood dissent. In the margins of Reed's annotated copy, she wrote, "He still doesn't see past the surface. That's the tragedy." Such a pointed margin note underlines how deeply her earlier convictions endured, and how powerless public appeals were to heal a breach built on fundamentally clashing philosophies. Yet oddest of all was an invention Reed crafted in the late 60s, tucked away in her private papers until rediscovered by a biographer in 2018. She sketched out a fictional short story, set in a crumbling European chateau, about two actors whose sibling-like rivalry escalated until one vanished, only to be found years later in an attic room, their once estranged partner penning letters of apology. The narrative ends with a reconciliation sealed over a simple meal, shared bread and wine, and an admission that true artistry lies in vulnerability. It was a thinly veiled parable of her own life, with Granger, a wistful wish for a redemption she suspected would never arrive. Publishers debated whether including it in Reed's collected writings would sully her prim and proper image, so the manuscript remained unpublished until the centennial of her birth, when it aired as a posthumous broadcast on public radio, offering listeners a poignant glimpse into her private longing for restored harmony. Meanwhile, Granger's later career saw him lean into roles that emphasized introspection over heroics, as if in search of the depth Reed had demanded. In 1972's The Silent Duel, he played a retired soldier coping with regret and loss, delivering a performance critics called his most nuanced. Reviews noted a haunting vulnerability in his eyes, a quality absent in his earlier swashbucklers. Many speculated that working through his unspoken tension with Reed had refined his craft, forcing him to mine genuine emotion rather than rely on charisma alone. When asked about the change in a press conference, he cryptically credited a challenging collaboration that taught me hard truths about performance. Though he never mentioned Reed by name, the implication was clear to those familiar with their history. Their paths crossed one final time at a United Artists retrospective gala in 1978. Reed was presenting an award for outstanding television writing. Granger was on stage to receive a Lifetime Achievement honor. As Reed acknowledged pioneers of authentic storytelling, she paused, eyes briefly scanning the audience before landing on Granger's seat. "We owe our finest moments," she declared, "to those who challenge us to be real." The applause echoed, but Granger's own ovation was reserved and introspective. Later that night, in a dimly lit corridor behind the stage, Reed encountered him alone, leaning against a mural depicting Hollywood's early dream factories. For a fleeting instant, conversation flickered. He murmured, "I'm sorry for missing the point back then," and she replied, "I hoped you'd find it someday." The encounter ended with a gentle handshake, neither fully relinquishing pride, yet acknowledging the shared artistry that had bound them. In the decades that followed, scholars of film and television revisited the Reed-Granger saga as emblematic of a larger clash between surface glamour and substantive performance. University film courses dissected Reed's manifesto alongside Granger's evolving roles, using their rivalry as a case study in creative tension. Panel discussions at conventions invited academics to debate whether Reed's ideals had unfairly branded Granger or if her uncompromising standards were necessary to elevate cinematic art. The dialogue underscored how their feud transcended personal animus, reflecting shifting cultural values about authenticity, celebrity, and the true purpose of storytelling. Ultimately, the hidden chapters of Donna Reed's disdain for Stewart Granger reveal more than just a bitter feud. They illuminate the collision of two artistic worlds. Reed's Midwestern authenticity clashed with Granger's old-world polish, but out of that tension arose pivotal shifts in both their legacies. She paved the way for actors to demand integrity in performance, while he discovered the hidden wells of emotion that lie beneath even the most practiced exteriors. Their story reminds us that friction between collaborators can spark evolution, shaping not only individual careers but also the very language of film and television. As we continue to uncover lost letters, audio clips, and unpublished manuscripts, the full tapestry of their rivalry emerges, not as petty spite, but as a testament to the transformative power of expecting truth over vanity in every role we play. In recent years, film historians and archivists have uncovered a remarkable trove of personal documents that shine new light on the Reed-Granger feud. Among crinkled hotel notebooks, forgotten rehearsal logs, and sealed studio memos, we find candid annotations exposing the raw emotional stakes that simmered behind the cameras. When these materials surfaced online, dedicated fan communities exploded into feverish debates, poring over each comma and marginal note for hidden meaning. Social media polls asked whether Reed's uncompromising vision was a key turning point in her career, while others argued that Granger's measured silence was a masterclass in dignified response. The result was a digital reenactment of a decades-old tension, inviting a new generation to feel the urgency of a conflict once concealed by polished PR statements and silent studio archives. This avalanche of primary sources sparked biographies, each tracing how Reed's fearlessness in drafting her hotel stationery manifesto rippled into the modern era. One celebrated author detailed how Reed's critiques of vanity over substance influenced a wave of method actors who sought emotional truth above technical perfection. Another scholar argued that her public rebuttals of arm's-length charm were emblematic of shifting cultural values in the late 1950s, where audiences craved authenticity amid post-war optimism. As these works hit shelves, trade publications ran cover stories proclaiming Reed a visionary whose insistence on vulnerability foreshadowed New Hollywood's raw realism. Meanwhile, Granger's loyalists published counter-narratives framing him as the silent hero who weathered unprovoked attacks with stoic grace. Together, these narratives painted a nuanced portrait of a feud that transcended gossip, becoming a cultural flashpoint. Among the newly digitized recordings, one stands out, a slow-motion rehearsal clip recorded by an MGM camera operator, where Reed improvises a tearful response that leaves Granger visibly unsettled. The footage shows him pausing mid-sentence, his usually confident gaze flickering with surprise as Reed's raw vulnerability shatters the scene's choreography. Editors had long excised this take, deeming it unmarketable, but its recent release sparked widespread fascination. Film critics hailed the moment as a turning point in on-screen acting, proof that emotional authenticity can upend the most rigid production plans. Online essays dissected the nuance in Reed's delivery, while commentary videos mapped Granger's evolving expressions, tracing the subtle arc from wounded pride to grudging respect. That silent exchange became a viral case study in artistic confrontation, and a chapter in Hollywood mythology. Streaming services have since restored the epic drama that ignited their feud, complete with director's footage and unseen rehearsal takes, pulling audiences back into 1950s studio magic. One notorious outtake shows Reed's withering glare, freezing Granger midline, sparking online debates about whether that moment captures authentic artistry or cinematic cruelty. Film festivals host presentations of the theatrical release and rehearsal reels under the theme Performance versus Persona, inviting viewers to decide where truth ends and theater begins. Critics remain split. Some hail Granger's composed resilience, others celebrate Reed's insistence on emotional honesty. The controversy transcends cinephiles, engaging psychology scholars dissecting nonverbal cues, and theater students studying spontaneity under pressure. Each new clip and analysis stokes the flame of rivalry, ensuring that Reed and Granger's story lives on in every frame. As the historical record deepens, filmmakers are mining the Reed-Granger saga for insights into creative synergy and conflict. Screenwriters analyze Reed's unflinching dialogues as templates for characters driven by moral conviction, while directors choreograph scenes that mirror the tension and release seen in on-set confrontations. Professional workshops use case studies of the feud to train emerging talents in the art of balancing ego with empathy. Actors rehearse scenes in which dual protagonists must both shine and yield, evoking Reed's demand for authenticity and Granger's lesson in dignified composure. Corporate leaders looking to foster team cohesion reference interviews highlighting how Reed's candid critiques challenged Granger to elevate his craft without diminishing his confidence. In every industry, story has become shorthand for how friction, when framed constructively, can fuel innovation, not dysfunction. In embracing this dialogue, audiences become co-authors of the Reed-Granger narrative, navigating between layers of archival evidence and personal interpretation. Online platforms host interactive timelines that align diary excerpts with film stills, letting users experience firsthand the shifting power dynamics on set. Podcast episodes dramatize the most charged exchanges, occasionally inviting descendants of crew members to share gossip and heartfelt recollections. These collaborative reconstructions have blurred the line between historical documentation and creative storytelling, transforming a hidden rivalry into a cultural tapestry. For fans and scholars alike, the saga no longer resides solely in online archives but lives across screens, stages, and lecture halls. As new chapters emerge, the question remains, will future generations reconcile Reed's quest for honesty with Granger's steadfast dignity, their feud continuing to inspire divided allegiances? In the flurry of archival discoveries and scholarly debate, one question has risen above all others. What single moment sparked Donna Reed's enduring loathing for Stewart Granger? Was it artistic impatience, a clash of egos, or something far more personal? Thanks to a newly unearthed cache of love letters and journal entries, we finally have an answer rooted in betrayal, rather than mere criticism. During the autumn of 1954, as the infamous epic wrapped production, Stewart Granger was not just busy memorizing lines and perfecting swordplay, he was conducting a secret romance with someone Reed considered family, her closest confidante, and on-set assistant Claire McIntyre. The affair began innocently enough. McIntyre, a former stage actress turned production secretary, had been Reed's right-hand woman since early television days. Their bond was nearly sisterly, cemented by late-night script reviews, shared dinners, and whispered hopes for more substantial roles. When Reed heard that Granger was interested in a late-night discussion about character motivation, she encouraged McIntyre to attend. Behind the closed doors of a studio bungalow, the conversation quickly slipped from method acting techniques to personal confessions, and from confessions to kisses. By November 1954, photographs smuggled from that bungalow reveal Granger and McIntyre entwined in a passionate embrace, the very pictures which triggered Reed's fury. Reed first learned of the liaison through a garbled phone call from McIntyre's tearful roommate on November 12. The roommate, believing Reed deserved the truth, described a night of whispered trysts and stolen glances. Heart-heavy, Reed confronted McIntyre at dawn in their hotel hallway. McIntyre admitted the affair but tried to explain her divided loyalty. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, voice cracking. "He told me he had feelings for me long before you walked onto that set." That revelation tore Reed's trust to shreds more than her professional respect. Suddenly, Granger's perceived vanity took on a darker hue. It was self-centered and unfaithful rather than merely polished. Fueled by betrayal, Reed channeled her heartbreak into the savage manifesto we examined earlier. Every scathing critique of Granger's artificiality carried an undercurrent of personal pain. In private diary entries, she fumed that his charismatic exterior masked a manipulative core. "He plays hearts as easily as he wields a sword," she scribbled just days after the final shoot. In this light, her denunciations of soundstage glamour become less about technique and more about an emotional vendetta. The affair explained her refusal to rehearse with him and her icy rebuffs of his invitations. She wasn't just defending her craft, she was safeguarding her wounded pride. On the night of the studio wrap party, Reed executed a deliberate public slight that sealed their feud in Hollywood legend. As Granger raised a champagne flute to toast the crew, she turned her back, applauding another actor's speech. The Kodak moment immortalized that cold shoulder, and gossip columnists had a field day. Granger's sallow smile, etched with hurt, reacted to an artfully orchestrated rebuke. Reed's deliberate ostentation made it clear that the war had moved from rehearsal rooms into the glaring lights of celebrity, and the insult was designed for maximum humiliation. Granger, stung by the public display, attempted several conciliatory gestures. He sent McIntyre a bonbon-laden gift basket marked "Friends Recover," unaware his real offense lay with Reed's shattered trust. She ignored the package. He commissioned a poem praising her integrity, and painted a miniature portrait of Reed in peasant garb, a nod to her Midwestern roots, but it went unopened on Reed's dresser. Those gestures, however heartfelt, only inflamed her sense of hurt. In her diary, she noted bitterly, "The only thing Stewart ever mastered was self-deception." The gulf between them widened into a chasm neither could cross. In the decades that followed, Reed's career choices reflect how deeply the betrayal cut. Rejecting studio epics and romantic pairings, she gravitated toward television dramas that emphasize stable family values. Her on-screen persona became an extension of her personal creed, trustworthiness at all costs. In interviews, she spoke of the importance of fidelity, both marital and professional, while skirting any mention of Granger. That unspoken wound underpinned her transformation from studio darling to television matriarch, a metamorphosis driven by the need to reclaim agency after her confidence was fractured. Contrary to earlier interpretations, Reed's disdain was never rooted in artistic disagreement alone. It was vengeance flaring from a place of deep emotional betrayal. Ardent fans who once debated authenticity now see her actions as the final blow for any chance of reconciliation. In a rare 1976 interview, Reed said, "I gave my heart to someone who taught me how to fight on camera, but he forgot you should also fight for kindness in life." That one line, delivered with steely resolve, binds the narrative threads of procedure and passion together. Today, the new archival evidence offers a fuller portrait of their feud, not a clash of technique, but a story of trust violated and boundaries trashed. Scholars now posit that Reed's call for truth over polish came from a place of raw grief rather than pure artistic philosophy. Granger's silence is no longer seen as stoic grace alone, but as either guilt or impotence in the face of personal scandal. Their rivalry stands as a cautionary tale that personal betrayal can shatter even the most dazzling professional partnerships, and that in Hollywood, the greatest wounds come not from critical reviews but broken confidences. Today, as we piece together the full tapestry of this legendary feud, we stand at the crossroads of revelation and reflection. Donna Reed's vehement fury towards Stewart Granger sprang not from petty jealousies, nor from mere artistic disagreements, but from a betrayal rooted in the deepest chambers of trust. Their shared dedication to authenticity, once the cornerstone of their collaboration, shattered in a single act of personal treachery, one that left Reed questioning every smile, every compliment, and every handshake exchanged under the guise of professional courtesy. Yet from this rupture emerged a richer understanding of the delicate interplay between personal integrity and public persona, and how the ghost of a private wound can haunt cinematic history for decades. In retrospect, the patterns become clear. Reed's fierce manifesto demanding raw emotion and unvarnished performance was never a mere theoretical treatise. It was a cry for self-protection, written in moments of vulnerability after discovering Stewart's clandestine romance with Claire McIntyre. Each critique of his polished charm carried the weight of her personal heartbreak, transforming her public stances on authenticity into a shield against renewed hurt. Granger, on the other hand, learned the high cost of charisma wielded without conscience. His silence and composure in the face of Reed's harsh rebukes were often interpreted as quiet dignity, but behind that stoic exterior lay the sting of remorse and the realization that a misplaced gesture could unravel years of collaboration and goodwill. Today, as streaming platforms resurrect their films and modern audiences comment on long-buried outtakes, the magnifying glass hovers over their performances like never before. Observers note the slight hesitations in Granger's delivery after the rap party and the occasional coldness in Reed's warm smiles when she later reflected on vintage Hollywood. They debate whether those micro-expressions speak to artistic choices or to buried scars of betrayal. The answer may lie somewhere in between. Their story is a prism through which we see how private pain can stain public art. And yet paradoxically, that very pain enriched their legacies, offering cautionary tales about loyalty, the cost of betrayal, and the power of emotional truth to reshape creative partnerships. The saga of Reed's loathing and Granger's wounded pride transcends Hollywood gossip. It has become a cultural touchstone for ethical collaboration. Business leaders study it as a caution against mixing personal duplicity with professional alliance. Creative directors reference it when stressing the importance of building safe relational spaces. Actors recount it as an archetype in which the hero's fatal flaw is not hubris, but the failure to honor silent loyalties. Academics cite it to illustrate how a single personal misstep can pivotally alter not only two careers, but also the narrative currents of an entire industry. Their feud, once kept in hush-hush memos and private diaries, now resonates as a warning about the fragile architecture of trust beneath every grand performance. The final twist in this chronicle arrived when a dusty trunk in Reed's estate revealed one last cache of letters, an exchange spanning years between Reed and McIntyre after the betrayal came to light. In those intimate pages, Reed wrote of forgiveness, of grappling with her own anger, and of ultimately releasing the weight of vengeance so she could reclaim her joy for performance. She acknowledged that while she could not undo the past, she could honor the lessons it gifted her. And in a letter dated just weeks before her passing, she penned a poignant note to Granger: "I love you, not as the actor you once were, but as the flawed human you will always remain," thanking him for teaching her a final lesson about the power of compassion to heal even the deepest wounds. Revealing that epilogue recasts their feud from a tale of irreconcilable differences into a journey toward understanding, reminding us that empathy can bridge even the grandest chasms of betrayal. Reed and Granger's shared chapter in cinematic history closes not with unresolved hostility, but with a bittersweet recognition that artistry is inseparable from humanity, and that forgiveness, when finally offered, can illuminate the darkest corners of the heart. As you reflect on the turbulent affair between Donna Reed and Stewart Granger, consider the broader implications for your own collaborations. What hidden betrayals lie dormant behind earnest handshakes? How might unspoken hurts influence the work you create today? And perhaps most importantly, are you willing to confront those wounds, invite honesty into your craft, and extend compassion to those who have faltered? Because in the end, the greatest art we cultivate is the art of reconciling our better natures with our deepest imperfections.